So today we're going to talk a little bit about staff responsibility and ethics, because those are things that I always kind of have in the back of my mind, but we don't really talk about. And I think that it's super duper important um, that we're all kind of on the same page when it comes to what we can put in a yearbook, what we can't, and how we can give constructive feedback. Um, we're going to talk about ethics. We're going to talk about laws, which aren't that exciting, but kind of interesting. You will want to, at some point, watch the video. I included it for you in the post on the Google Classroom about a young man named Austin and how he drew a butterfly. So I want you to, when you're finished watching this video, I want you to watch that story if you haven't already, and really think about the feedback that he got and how that impacted the butterfly that he drew. Okay, so being ethical. So a legal action is one that follows rules that have been written down, like, not stealing. Ethics, on the other hand, is one that is right, but has nothing to do with laws. So being honest and treating people fairly is not written down anywhere. It's not a law, and yet it is something that we all try to do. So that's the difference between legal action and ethical action. Okay. Legal action has to do with the law. These are the rules, these are the laws, these are the things that are written down. Versus ethical, which are things that we know to be right, and so we follow them. Teamwork is something that we're going to have to do, right? Some of us are at home, some of us are in person. We have no idea what school's going to look like. And yet here we are as a yearbook. We need to be able to communicate clearly and kindly, because, one wrong word and you can completely tear apart a relationship. So let's not have that happen. And if it does happen, let's work on building some of those bridges. We want to make sure that we're consistent in our attitude and behavior, because that's so, so important. I always tell students, if I had a tattoo, it would say choose kindness. And I am consistent in that. My children could tell you that. Anybody I had as a freshman, anybody I've had as a sophomore, anybody I've had as a junior or a senior, that is something that I'm consistent about. I think that all people should be treated fairly. Okay. Inspiration can come from any member of our group. It can come from people outside of our group. Okay. If, again, inspiration is something to think about when we talk about Easter seals, right? Those students have absolutely inspiring stories, but yet you and everyone in our class has the ability to be inspirational. And then finally, we all have to be open to new ideas. Oftentimes students say, Mrs. Powers, what do you think of my yearbook page? And I'll tell you the truth. If I don't, red's not one of my favorite colors. So if you use a lot of red, I'm going to say, I really like how you did this. Red's not my favorite color, but you know what? It's your page, because I have to be open to what you like to use on your page as well. We're all student journalists, and there are 3 ethical and legal obligations that we need to always and forever remember. The first of which is that we need to be fair and unbiased. I don't care who your best friend is. I don't care who your worst enemy is. All sides of the story, no matter what, needs to be included in the yearbook. Okay? You may think that football is the worst sport on the planet, and yet, you know what? It's going to get coverage because it's part of our yearbook, or it's part of our school. So we have to include it. Okay. Both sides to a story should be told. Okay. There's that old adage that there's, your side, my side, and the truth that's somewhere in the middle. So we need to make sure that we are fair and unbiased when we are reporting our information. We also need to make sure that we're accurate. This is something that I think every year we kind of struggle with, especially when it comes to names. I was 5 seconds away from submitting the final pages, and I looked at a picture, and I thought, I'm not quite sure if that picture is tagged properly. And so this is something that we all really, really need to be mindful of. If you are tagging, and we'll talk about what that means later, but if you're tagging a picture or if you're identifying people in a picture, you want to make sure that you are being accurate. Okay. And again, as Dr. Gresham, he wants us to make sure that we include all varsity records. And maybe our varsity, cross country record is 0-12. You know what? It happens. We're a reference book. We're a history book. We need to make sure that we're accurate. Okay. Anything that gets submitted by anybody needs to be checked for accuracy. Okay. And in that regard, we don't beg, borrow, and steal pictures unless we have permission. Okay. And that's one of those accuracy pieces. And then finally, good taste. And, how much more fitting when I, just watched the news and there was somebody, I think from the Cincinnati Reds baseball team, that said something that he shouldn't have and is now probably out of a job. Okay. So we need to be very, very mindful of racism and sexism. We need to be mindful of ethnic slurs. Anything that's an inside joke, anything that glamorizes illegal activity, that's a no. A couple years ago, I submitted some yearbook pages and I got back from the plant that there were some issues with some of the hand gestures that people were doing. I had no idea that these hand gestures had any kind of extra or additional, meaning. I don't think that our students use them in that way, but just to be safe, we took them out of the yearbook. So we want to make sure that listen to your inner voice, and if you don't have an inner voice, pretend that I'm your inner voice. If it's funny, if it's crude, that's not something that belongs in a yearbook. Okay. So we need to be mindful that anything that we put in the yearbook has to be held to that high standard. Okay. This is going in the history books forever. So we want to make sure that we are very thoughtful in the decisions that we make and in the content that we include.
Oh, hello there.
Don't mind my son. So libel is printed. It's false. It can be words, pictures, identifying people, harming people's reputation. We do not use the yearbook to harm people's feelings. Okay. And so we need to make sure, we don't do a lot of editing when it comes to pictures. We will mess with the color sometimes and do a special process called selective color, but we are not photoshopping one person's head onto another person's body. We're not doing anything like that, particularly with the intent to harm someone's reputation. Okay. So illegal. Okay. So let's be mindful of that and not have that issue. Okay. A journalist can be considered at fault if, if it can be proven that the writer didn't verify accuracy. So if we write an article and are completely, lie or don't do the groundwork to gather information, then that's a problem. Okay. Now, public figures, they have all kinds of extra things that they need to be careful of, but we need to be making sure that everything is accurate when we're putting it into the yearbook. Both writers and editors, and even if you're under 18, you can be held responsible. I will make sure that I do my best to read and look at everything that gets turned as well, but know that you could be, if it's found to be intentful, you could be in this issue. So let's stay away from anything that could cause any kind of suing. That's never a fun thing. Okay. Remember that truth is always the defense. So making a joke is that's not a defense. Okay. Not a defense at all. Copyright. So copyright is a hard one. So a lot of times students say, well, Mrs. Powers, why can't we create a yearbook that uses, all the superheroes or uses the Mario characters? Or, if the Easter Seals Assembly is going to be using a particular Disney movie, why can't we use, those kinds of images in our yearbook? And the reason is copyright. There is intellectual property, art, and book covers that are not allowed to be used in our yearbook. Okay. Images that are found on the internet are copyrighted. I feel like this should be in bold. So we have to get permission from owners in order to do that. Now, Disney has been known to say no anytime someone has asked to use their artwork in a yearbook or otherwise. So I always stay very, very clear of anything that I know that's copyrighted, and I'm trusting you to do the same. Okay. We don't use a lot of clip art in our book. If we do, it's clip art that is in the public domain, and I will show you where you can find that. Any clip art images that are in Yearbook Avenue are allowed. But again, I always say We are not an elementary book, so we need to stay away from clip art unless it absolutely fits what we're doing. So, could we use this book? Oh, the places you'll go. That's a common theme, especially for eighth grade graduations and high school. I've been known to give this book to some of my friends as well. Could we use art and text from this book? No, absolutely not. Are there bits and pieces that we could use? Maybe teeny tiny bits and pieces, but I would absolutely not feel comfortable doing anything Dr. Seuss in our yearbook, unless that last item that says what would make it legal is if we contacted the Seuss people and asked if it was okay to use their information in our yearbook. Okay. And I have no idea what the timeline for that looks like. So don't even dream that's something that we're gonna do. Okay. So we need to stay clear of all copyrighted stuff. And here's kind of an example of all things that are copyrighted: song lyrics, literary works, artwork, photographs, TV characters, computer software, movie characters, games, currency, lots and lot logos. Using the Nike swoosh in our yearbook is against copyright. Now, if somebody's wearing a Nike logo, should we blur it out? I don't know, maybe, but we don't quite get that far. But you'll never see us have a theme that involves like Friends, for example, because I know that's really popular right now, and I see a lot of T-shirts with some of the Friends like logo. Yeah, we are not going to create a book like that because I am way too worried about getting sued in the copyright implications. So fair use is when a person may let you use a photo or text or something like that, and as long as you have gotten permission, as long as it is public domain kind of material, it is absolutely allowed to use. Um, a lot of times people think that what they create is covered under fair use. Fair use doesn't cover the use of that work in student newspapers or yearbooks. Um, because our yearbooks and newspapers are going to be printed and handed out. So we need to make sure, long story short, that we get permission to use any photographs, any music, any artwork, any text for educational purposes. We need to make sure that we get permission from the person who created it. Trademark. Our titles, phrases, and slogans. They can be trademark protected. Slogans, almost every slogan that you can think of. A lot of stars will trademark their name. So those are things that we're not using in our yearbook. Okay. And again, so, this means it can't be used for commercial purposes. And most people would say, well, we're not commercial, right? We're an educational entity. Well, we're selling our yearbook, kids. And so we cannot use anything that's been trademarked in our yearbook as well. Okay. So you're going to look at some scenarios that are in the Google Classroom, work on this project individually, answer your questions right on the Kami assignment, and I'll see you soon.